Good day, everyone. Embassy Direct once again welcomes you to our session of 9 months around the globe. This day with featuring all the way to the Far East, Singapore. I will now introduce quickly our host, Mr. Otto de Vries. Otto.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, and good morning to all of you joining us from South Africa and our colleagues from Singapore who are located in various locations, two of them at least with us here in South Africa. So it gives me absolute pleasure and an honor to first of all introduce His Excellency the Ambassador, the High Commissioner of the Republic of Singapore for the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Mantaha. We also have with us today from Singapore, Judy Lum, who is a business consultant with Plan Trip, and she also represents the local travel agent association. We also have with us today David Pinches, who is the general manager for Central and Southern Africa at Singapore Airlines. David and I work very closely together, so it's great to have him join us. And last but not least, Mr. Liam Kinbon, who is the area director designate for Singapore Tourism, North and East India, as well as South Africa. So it's wonderful to have such a great and esteemed team of people. As always, folks, when we go around the globe, the idea and the theme is one of a round table where we get to chat a little bit about the destination, about the do's, the don'ts, the likes, the dislikes, the loves, the hates, whatever it might be. But hopefully what it will be is we're taking us on a virtual journey to the incredible destination that is Singapore. And I'm very, very excited to be your panel host this morning and this afternoon as we go through this. And like with all of our sessions, what we like to do is begin by sharing a little bit about the destination itself. So Singapore Tourism Board is going to take us through a number of slides just to set the scene, at which point we will then begin a conversation, what I like to call a round table, and we will chat a little bit more about the exciting, wonderful, and dynamic destination that is Singapore. So with that, I'm handing you over to Mr. Kian Bon Lim, and thank you so much for joining us all the way from India, and we look forward to finding out a little bit more about the destination.
Thank you, Otto. Hello, everybody. So with no further ado, I can introduce myself, but I will just share the slides first, and then we can get started. Okay, there we go. Okay. All right, so good afternoon again. Greetings from New Delhi. My name is Kian Bond, or KB as most people call me or know me. So I'm the area director based in New Delhi, overseeing North as in East India, Bangladesh, as well as Africa, the whole continent. So I'll be taking you through a very quick update on Singapore as a destination for leisure holidays, for business travel today, with a spotlight on all the new experiences and options that have emerged for visitors following our emergence from the pandemic. So before I go into the highlights, I just wanted to touch on the African visitorship in Singapore to give a broad overview. So sharing some context of these. So this year, we've seen over 35,000 visitors from Africa in the first 7 months of 2023. So this is about 80% of the number that we had back in 2019. And we hope the gap can close by the end of the year as a sign of return to the pre-COVID normal travel situation. And the key direct air connections between Singapore and Africa today are in the cities of Joburg, Cape Town, and Addis Ababa. And visitor segments that Singapore generally receive from the African continent, especially from South Africa, are the leisure, free and independent travelers, or FITs, as we call them in the travel trade, and various groups of business travelers in all sizes. So that's the broad profile that we have. So now coming to the destination update. So I will be highlighting some new attractions, hotels, experiences, and also touch on our latest move on wellness and sustainability to differentiate Singapore in the post-COVID context. I will then touch on our evergreen pillars, cruise, business tourism, and I'll end off by highlighting some of the events of appeal to overseas visitors. So just to contextualize this a little bit more, I won't be covering the key attractions in the normal way in terms of like the A to Z, the laundry list of everything that Singapore has to offer. But a lot of this is framed around Destination Singapore 2023, as you can see in the title deck. So the spotlight is really on the new things, especially within the last 2 to 3 years where global travel had really stopped. The destination itself continued to reinvent itself, and a lot of new things started coming up. So now we are starting to see a few of these coming through in 2022 and 2023. So I will just move on to the new attractions as a start. So 2 new family and youth-friendly attractions have come up in the city. The New York City originated Museum of Ice Cream, very popular with the millennials and also with the family segments. Even the local population and the local communities have love it. And on the right-hand side, you see the long-standing bird park, previously from Jurong, the western part of the island. It has relocated to Mandai and rebranded itself as Bird Paradise. So this is completely brand new, and it's now very close to the zoo, the Singapore Zoo, which is also a very famous attraction, as well as the night safari. So moving on to the new experiences, we have families and friends who are exploring more unique activities in the city in their itinerary can also enjoy some indoor playground of high elements in Orchard Road in this Escape on the left-hand side, or they can go on a yacht tour of our Southern Islands. This Southern Island yacht tour itself has been gaining popularity as it gives a very different dimension to a typical itinerary where most of it is centered around the city, around the precincts. So this does give you access to the southern waters, also exploring some of the islands south of the Marina Bay area and Sentosa. So moving on to some other new experiences, I thought to highlight unique experiences even in the Universal Studios. Some of them might be a bit more unique to Singapore. So there are the theme nights, such as the Halloween Horror Nights. And then there is, on the right-hand side, you see the reopening of Kidzania. So this is an indoor entertainment and education type of attraction, very popular with families, with young children. And in this reopening, there are also additional theme parks targeting younger audience. Moving on to the hospitality options. So as a start, Singapore is already home to numerous hotels for all budgets. And more recently, after the pandemic, we have some new hospitality options in the city, starting with the opening of Hilton Singapore. This is Asia Pacific's biggest Hilton yet, with over 1,000 rooms right in the heart of the retail precinct, Orchard. And moving on, this year, we have seen even more new options, such as the Pan Pacific Orchard with the unique architecture and green facade. That's the first circle that you see there in the visual. And to some global brands, such as Icon, the Mondrian, which is not on this slide, and also the Standard. So some are opening soon, and all of these are in the pipeline. There's Addition, there's Como, and there's also the Raffles Sentosa Resort and Spa. So all of these we expect to be done by 2024. And then that will really enhance the range of hotels and hospitality offerings across the destination. So this part, new dining and bar experiences has always been on the appeal. So hawker center or street food experiences, this remains a very popular favorite dining option for many visitors. And beyond that, what we have highlighted on this slide would be visitors that are always looking for memorable dining and bar experiences. They can start off by exploring from the list of our 55 Michelin-starred restaurants and over 10 of Asia's 50 best bars in the city itself. Now, this is something new. So during the pandemic, we also evolved our experience development strategy by looking at 2 new pillars. First, a spotlight on the array of experiences for visitors seeking some form of wellness component when they are traveling. So we do notice that Singapore already has a wide range of wellness offerings. There are some unique concepts here and there, but before the pandemic, we haven't really come and organized all of these into something from an experience development perspective or from a tourism perspective. So that's one area that we have developed over the last 1 to 2 years. And the positioning is for Singapore to be an urban wellness haven, well differentiated from the traditional idea of wellness, where people always think about Bali, from Phuket, yoga, and things like that. So this is a bit different. So the urban aspect is very clear, and so we want to see how we can then complement the visitors' wellness seeking endeavor by offering some of these wellness products and experiences. So the second part, as you can see below, we also zoomed in on sustainability. So this one is in line with the Singapore Green Plan. There was a wider whole of government initiative, a green plan of sorts to, or rather it's called the Green Plan. So it's a sustainability plan to ensure that we are well on track to be sustainable, environmentally, socially, culturally, in all aspects. But predominantly, we have to make a very concerted move in terms of the environment aspect. So that we focus on that in our various tourism pursuits as well. And we have also gotten Singapore certified as a sustainable tourism destination under the GSTC's criteria. So moving on to the two key pillars of our visitorship, or rather the two key pillars of our tourism experiences. So cruise is the first one I'm going to talk about. So as the gateway to Southeast Asia and the rest of the world, Singapore has been the preferred home port of numerous cruise lines. So before COVID, there were a number of them, and right now we have the return of Royal Caribbean International and the Resorts World Cruises, as you can see here. And a bit more exciting now will be come 2025, Disney Cruise will be another leading cruise line that will home port in Singapore, and this will give families another reason to consider Singapore as the place from which to take off and set sail during the school holidays, especially. Just move this slide. Okay, coming to the business events part. So besides being the cruise hub, Singapore is also a popular destination for business travelers and business events. So other than safety and security, it has multiple award-winning event spaces and a matured and experienced local ecosystem of industry players to help ensure every business event or corporate incentive is successful and memorable. So leisure sports in Singapore are also adaptable as social venues for all business event types. And this, we hope, will always make a lasting and more holistic experience for the business traveler. This slide highlights a few of the schemes. So it's just a nutshell of all the various schemes that currently at the Singapore Tourism Board, we are employing them as tools to support business events in Singapore. So I won't go into detail, so you may contact me anytime should there be any incentive travel, business travel groups that are coming, that are keen to travel to Singapore. And then we can explore the schemes in detail. Yeah. So finally, this is the last my second last slide. So finally, Singapore's infrastructure and global connectivity makes it an attractive hub for large-scale leisure events and concerts. So F1, our annual night race since 2008. And come early next year, there will be 2 major concerts by A-listers, Coldplay, Taylor Swift. These will take place over several days each. And we hope that with these events, various visitors will also plan their trips to Singapore with an eye or with a view of attending these events as well. Yeah, this slide is just really our contact details. So I'm Kim Bon again, and my colleague Driti, she has dialed in as well. So we are both sitting in New Delhi, and we look after the African source market. And if there's any queries regarding the destination, please feel free to write to either myself, Driti, or even the both of us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kim Bon. Very interesting, and how unbelievably exciting. Just just getting a sense of how you are framing your destination, how you're looking to position your destination, and how you're looking to attract a varied, but clearly you guys have got some interesting plans, specifically when it looks at the concept of family holidays and how that links in with cruises. So exciting there with Disney coming in. Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, it is my it is my pleasure and honor to ask if you may please, before we watch a short video, also just welcome our audience and tell us a little bit more in terms of your role and the relationship, the long-standing relationship that we've enjoyed between South Africa and the Republic of Singapore.
Thank you, Otto. I'm very cross with you because we've agreed before we go live not to call each other by our designations, but just to call each other by our first names. And I'm not going to renege on my early agreement with you. I'm still going to address you as Otto. And yes, I'm still going to address everybody here as far as possible by their first name. Please don't use titles or designations because this is not the forum for it. It's not a diplomatic event. In fact, this is, for me, one of the better events I've got the privilege of attending and participating in because of the fact that it deals with an issue which interests me most. And so far as South Africa is concerned, I don't know whether you've been to South Africa before, KB or Judy in Singapore and KB in New Delhi. This is a fascinating place and one of the many communities that live in South Africa. South Africa actually has got, I think, 12 or 13 official languages. And one of the languages is Setswana, the language that's used also in Botswana and a large part of South Africa. And one of their favorite proverbs is actually, to travel is to see. I'm not going to say it in Setswana because I'm going to mangle the language, but to travel is to see. And I think that this is the reason why this particular seminar excites me, and particularly also because it talks about something which is positive, instead of having to deal with a lot of negativity in this world. But to talk about traveling, to talk about getting to know one another, I think it's a beautiful thing. And let me take this opportunity as well, Otto, to welcome all of the participants who've been tuned in, people like Jackie. I'm sorry, I don't mean to call you up. I hope you're not embarrassed when I call your name out. Kim, Leanne, Johnson, you've got Nicole, Nicola, Preska, Rachel. Hello from Pretoria, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining in. I hope that there'll be more of you coming in. But really, Ambassador Rodrigo Chiari, who's a good friend and who's also connected with Singapore, in case you all didn't know that. But congratulations to Rodrigo as well as Embassy Direct for launching this initiative. This program around the world in 9 months is actually quite an inspired idea because of the fact that it deals with an issue which I think is quite important for us to be able to come to grips with. Yes, the restrictions have come down, thank God. We've probably seen the back of COVID-19. Of course, there's every precaution to take, but a lot of the restrictions have been removed already, and travel is coming up. So the idea of launching this program series is inspired, and congratulations to Embassy Direct. And I think that you have also been quite astute in choosing the month of August for the episode on Singapore, simply because this is the month that Singapore celebrates our National Day, our Independence Day. And also in South Africa, not by happenstance, South Africa is also celebrating its Women's Month. And both the National Day of Singapore and the National Women's Day in South Africa fall on exactly the same date, the 9th of August. And for that, we have a double celebration, and that's pretty good. And I think that that the National Day will give Singaporeans, and KB would be able to testify to this. Judy is back in Singapore, so she knows what's going on there. It's a great time to visit Singapore because the country is just bursting with national pride and with patriotism, and you've got a different kind of Singapore and Singaporeans, the different kind of vibe about how much we cherish being in Singapore. We appreciate the privilege of living in Singapore. It's about gratitude for having a home. It's about gratitude for having UNESCO heritage sites. It's called Botanic Gardens. We're fully grateful about the fact that we've got to live in a place where you have one of the representative of the intangible cultural element of humanity, which is our hawker culture. And obviously you get to experience that, and for which we are very grateful. But it's also a place at the end of the day, which is home. So it's not just destination Singapore as a tourism location. It is a home. And I think by and large, Singapore basically wants to show travelers that, not so much about all the wonderful sites that KB has just given a foretaste of. And they are very exciting, mind you. But I think that people should come to visit Singapore because of the fact that we're very proud of the home that we have created for ourselves since our very humble beginnings in 1965. So this is something that, that we offer to you and to visitors in South Africa as well. And as far as the relevance of the Women's Month, of course, at the end of the day, women form a very, very important, pivotal, and almost an inevitable component of the tourism industry, not just in South Africa, of course, but everywhere else in this world. So they've got great taste, that's needless to say, and they have great sense. They have also a sheer practicality when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to decision-making on travel and on safety. And so therefore, for that reason, we are very glad that Embassy Direct has chosen the month of August as well for us to celebrate. So for all you ladies out there, kudos to you, chapeau to you. Thank you so much for your ingenuity, for your courage, for your resilience as well, and for making the world a much better place than it would have been without your presence. And I'm very glad for your presence here during the seminar, and I celebrate you. But as I mentioned before, with COVID-19 behind us, things are looking up. Singapore tourism sector did very well. KB would know. Our international business travel have been on the up. So I think this year we're expecting about 12 to 14 million visitors. And if the trend keeps up, we may be going back to pre-pandemic levels by 2024, which is a good thing. And but the challenge for us, of course, and KB knows this better than I do, is how then do we go? Where do we go from here? We have to build up our appeal as a tourism destination. We have to reinforce whatever mindshare that we enjoy among international travelers, and we have to capture the emerging market. KB has mentioned about wellness, and I think more importantly about the green travel or sustainable tourism market. And I'm not going to go through all the list of things that are happening in Singapore. I think KB has touched on that and given us a list. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about specific items that are coming, that are already existing in Singapore and that's coming on stream in Singapore. I myself am very excited about some of the things. But what I would like to highlight, Otto and Rodrigo, before I end, is the fact that undergirding all of the initiatives that KB has enumerated in some detail earlier is the fact that we are very conscious that whatever we do in order to develop Destination Singapore and whatever our efforts are with regards to enhancing our value proposition as a tourism destination, we are conscious that such efforts must adhere to our aspiration to be a sustainable tourist destination, a sustainable urban destination. And this is very much in line with what we call the Singapore Green Plan by 2030. So we hope that by 2030, we will realize our aspiration of being green in all sense of the word. And for that reason, we were very proud. I don't know whether KB has mentioned this, but Singapore was certified in February 2023, I think. as a sustainable destination based on the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, GSTC. I think KB referenced that in his intervention just now. That we've now been certified as a sustainable destination, and I think that testifies to our commitment to making Singapore a green place to visit. And ultimately, sustainability is a journey, as we all know. And we're determined very much to maximize the social and economic benefits of tourism, but also with our view or with our aspiration to reduce the environmental impact of tourism. And most importantly, to conserve our local heritage. I think tourists come to Singapore because of something that is original that they can find in Singapore. And it behooves us to retain and preserve and conserve that originality. And that's what we're trying to do. So in that regard also, KB, I don't know whether you mentioned this also, but we are going to host, I believe, the GSTC Global Conference in Singapore in November. And I hope that this will inspire more tourism businesses and destinations to contribute, at least for tourism to contribute to a greener world. I'm looking forward to Judy's intervention because she comes, of course, from the private sector. And in that sense, I'm looking forward to a contribution as well from the private sector perspective, how we are working in partnership, the government of Singapore and the private sector in Singapore to work together. And of course, I'm looking forward to David's presentation as well, because ultimately without Singapore Airlines, there'll be far fewer visitors in Singapore. So I think the fact that we have a daily flight between Singapore and Johannesburg and Cape Town as well, it's a big, huge plus, because I don't think there is any other direct connection between Africa and Southeast Asia. So the link provided by Singapore Airlines is critical. David will, of course, speak more about it. And with that, Otto, I hope I haven't gone beyond my time, and thank you very much. And I know I spoke a little bit fast, and forgive my accent. It's probably very difficult to understand. That's the thing that you have to experience in Singapore, is that we're always in a rush for time. It's not because we're rude. We very seldom say, how do you do, or saubona, but or dumelang, but we're actually quite nice people, despite the fact that we sometimes lack that sort of soft touch. But in any case, thank you very much for listening to me. And welcome again, everybody who's participating online. Thanks very much, Otto. Thanks, Rodrigo. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Zainal. See, I did it. I was actually able to get past it. And thank you for your kind words. And indeed, what more can one say than I think, you know, we have a long-standing and a very, very positive relationship between our countries. I had the great pleasure of visiting Singapore en route to New Zealand a couple of years ago. I had a meeting there with ASATA and a couple of colleagues, which at least gave me the opportunity to spend a few days there. And I was deeply, deeply impressed. Wonderful, warm, welcoming people. It was all I can say is it was just too short. And so I'm certainly looking forward to my next visit. So folks, I think what would be nice is if we...
Are you trying to take over my job then, Otto?
No, we'll leave that to you. I have no doubt that when it comes to our competency levels, your capacity and ability to perform in your role is way above my pay grade. So we'll leave that to you, my dear friend. Thank you very much. So, folks, I think what would be nice is if we maybe just take a lead on from Zainal there, and we just talk a little bit about you know, market access, and chat a little bit about you know, how easy or how difficult is it for South Africans. And I'm going to start off with you, if I may, Zainal, and just look at it from a visa perspective. So, you know, tell us a little bit about the process. How does that work? What can be expected? How is that going to play out?
I will be very, very brief. There is no visa requirement. South African passport holders are allowed to enter Singapore without a visa for 30 days. And believe me, you can do a lot in 30 days. and not just in Singapore, but the rest of the region as well. Because remember, Singapore is a hub from which you can leap off.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. So exciting, I guess, for us when we consider about, market access. For South Africans, it's a fairly common practice that we need to get visas in order to enter certain destinations. I think the passport is globally strengthening, and we're certainly seeing an opening up of access for us to travel, even if it's through an e-visa process. But that's very, very exciting news to know that as South African passport holders, you can enter Singapore and stay for 30 days without any requirement for a visa. David, just from your side, you represent, I guess, visitors' first encounter to the destination and its people and its culture in terms of your airline. And Singapore Airlines has a tremendous reputation globally. It tends to always be the one or the number two best airline in the world. I had the pleasure when I did fly through to New Zealand to travel with, yes, I know, number one at the moment, absolutely. I had the pleasure of flying on one of your aircraft, and can only affirm again that the product offering is phenomenal. But David, can you just share with us a little bit about the product, and a little bit about the offering on board? What can passengers expect? What fleet are you flying specifically on our market? Is it a seasonal? Is it all the time daily flights out of Johannesburg and Cape Town? And yes, what can passengers expect?
Okay, thanks, Otto. Yep, absolutely. It's an all-round daily service from Singapore. So it operates from Singapore non-stop into Johannesburg. It'll touch down here for about an hour before the aircraft then continues to Cape Town. About an hour and 20 minutes later from Cape Town, it comes back to Johannesburg. Again, about 1 hour later from Johannesburg back to Singapore. So that's a daily service. So essentially non-direct to Joburg, and just a very quick touch down in Joburg if you're boarding from Cape Town. It's an Airbus A350. So it's one of the latest aircraft we have in the fleet. So it's very fuel efficient and modern. We have 3 cabin classes on board. We have business class with 42 seats in business class. We have a premium economy, which is 24 seats. And then we have 180 seats in economy. So they're the 3 main cabin classes. And then it lands in Singapore at about 6 in the morning. So from Singapore, obviously it's a great destination. So we have customers here that just simply go to Singapore, spend a week and come back. We have others that prefer to stop over in Singapore, have a few days, and then they'll continue on our global network from Singapore. So from Singapore, we connect South Africa to over 100 plus destinations across 30 countries, be it Southeast Asia, North Asia, or down to Australia, New Zealand, like you shared in your example. So very often, because of the attractions of Singapore and it being such a beautiful country, most customers will stop over in Singapore one way or the other to experience that Singapore culture and friendliness and food and so on. A bit more on board. On board, obviously, we're a full-service airline, so all your meals and drinks are included. There's in-flight entertainment in every seat. From 1st of July, we became the first airline globally to offer free Wi-Fi across all 3 cabins, even economy class, simply by signing up to our loyalty scheme, which is free, which is called KrisFlyer. So again, if you sign up to KrisFlyer when you get on board in economy, you can have free Wi-Fi on your flight from Johannesburg or Cape Town to Singapore. Yeah, I think that summarizes us to a degree.
Yep, fantastic. And thanks, David. And I think that network connection is so critical, right? Because it is, I mean, what is the flying time between, let's say, Johannesburg and Singapore?
It's a 10-hour and 20-minute flight, and then the minimum connection time in Changi is actually 50 minutes. 50 minutes is the minimum. Right. It depends how relaxed you want to be with 50 minutes, but it's a smooth operation and we ensure it happens. Yeah. Yeah, and because we land at 6 in the morning, our main banks of aircraft leave around 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. So you have a very smooth, quick connection time. Although Changi has some great shopping, food, and so on within the airport. So we actually have customers that like to lay over in Changi itself for 4 or 5 hours to enjoy the experiences of being that award-winning transit hub as well. And then in the evenings, we depart from Changi back at 1:30 in the morning. And again, there's all the banks of flights. We call them banks of flights in aviation, but all the flights from Australia, New Zealand, land back in Changi about 10, 11 o'clock at night. You have multiple frequencies from Southeast Asia, North Asia, all landing back into Changi at around that 10, 11 o'clock window. And then there's that window of 1.5, 2 hours before all the flights depart again.
Yeah, and I think for those, and you talk about it being the only current connection between South Africa and Southeast Asia, but I think what's exciting for me is that despite that accessibility, it is the opportunity to spend some time in Singapore, either on your way through or, and I say this simply acknowledging that for, I think, a lot of South Africans, it is what we call like a hub stopover. And I think that people enjoy adding 3-4 days onto their journey. But I think where the exciting part of it comes in is acknowledging and recognizing it in its own right from a destination perspective, but also seeing the opportunity from a hub point of view around what is happening with the cruise line market. Judy, from your perspective, being on the ground, what are you seeing in terms of trends from an inbound point of view? You know, how are visitors considering or thinking about their time in Singapore? What are the kind of areas that they're currently sort of putting a lot of their thought into? I certainly see that there's a very strong family theme going on here. There's a lot of really great opportunities to see and explore family-orientated products, services, resorts, and destinations. What else can you share with us that makes Singapore, from your perspective, so very interesting from an inbound tourist point of view?
Yes, hello everyone. And from what KB has presented, you can see that there is a lot of things that a visitor can do when they visit Singapore. So normally what we'll do is we look at what are their needs. If it is a young couple, then we will curate itineraries or programs that would interest them. If it is a family, then if it is 2 generation or 3 generation, then we make sure that the activity suits all of them, right? Because of Singapore is a melting pot of culture. So I think for the visitors from South Africa, it would be very interesting for them because they are not too exposed to a lot of different Asian culture. So I think in Singapore, if they visit cultural enclaves like Chinatown, like Little India, well, Little India may be familiar because Durban has a lot of Indian, but Haji Lane, our Kampong Glam, is a place that we are very proud of. It shows our diversity and our tolerance. It is a Muslim area, and at the same time, it also have a very vibrant nightlife. So things like that is good to show to our visitors. Another thing is the modernity in Singapore. You know, Marina Bay is nice. Just one evening in Marina Bay, showing the skyline, showing the world-class shopping center, entertainment and dining opportunities, options there. And history and culture. Singapore is also very rich in history and culture. And they can visit the museums, historical sites, so it depends. So for me, is if I look at South Africa, I'm very excited when this webinar is coming to Singapore, because I was in the South African market in the mid-90s to the early 2000s. At that time, 1 Singapore dollar was only like 250 to 3 South African rand. But now it is like almost 1 to 13 or 14, So one of the reasons why I stopped going to South Africa for sales is because my client in South Africa at that time was facing a big challenge promoting the traffic to Singapore when the devaluation of the African rand took place, So I used to go there like almost every year. I partner with the South African tour operator, and we will visit like Joburg, we'll visit Pretoria, we'll visit Durban, we'll visit Cape Town, and we will hold workshops for travel agents. And that's where, you know, I could just sell Singapore to them. And South Africans love Singapore because Singapore, as a city, as an island state, we are not vast like South Africa. So when they come to Singapore, they feel so comfortable, able to just walk around. And English is widely spoken, and a lot of South Africans speak English very well. And they love the shopping. Oh, the shopping. That was before the rand devalue was so good value to them. And then they combine Thailand and Singapore. So we had a very good run for, you know, maybe 7 to 10 years in South Africa. At that time, the Singapore Tourism Board even have an office in South Africa. I think it was in Pretoria. I can't remember, but I think it was somewhere there. So very excited if I have a chance to go back to South Africa. If the you know, the interest for Singapore, we can really build it back. It will be very good for us to be able to push Singapore. The safe and secure environment in Singapore is also very attractive. So South African travelers, you know, I remember when I was in Cape Town, when I wanted to go to a restaurant that's just 100 meters down the road from my hotel, and my hotel concierge didn't allow me to do it, and they said, no, sorry, Judy, let's get the tourist police for you. They will walk you to the restaurant, you know. So I always tell the South African traveler, I said, come to Singapore because you can go anywhere you like. I let my daughter go to the club and come home at 4 a.m. and I have no problem with it. You know, so this is something that is good to sell to you know, the South African traveler. And at the same time, like what His Excellency and KD has said, sustainability now is the big thing, isn't it? Look at the wildfire, look at what's happening in Europe, look at the heat wave. I think it's time we have to really give a lot of attention to the environment. And, you know, Singapore is going in the right direction at that. And wellness, I can do like go to the Singapore Botanical Garden and have Tai Chi, you know, and after that have, you know, something healthy to drink, a nice juice, you know, to drink. Things like that I can curate it and include it into the tour so that, you know, they can feel this sense of greenness, wellness, sustainability in Singapore. All right. So once we can get all the things that are attractive to the South African visitors or Southern Africa visitors, I think then it's time for us to be able, together with the Singapore Tourism Board and Singapore Airlines, we can look for a good, you know, a few good tour operator where we can meet up with them and talk to them and see what kind of packages we can put together with them, so that it is, they can sell it confidently and easily, you know, to their clients, you know. So and at the same time, of course, attend trade shows or road shows, whatever we can. Yeah. So basically, as a tour operator, that's my wish list.
No, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank
So I
you.
hope Otto answers your
No, absolutely.
question.
Thank you. And I have no doubt that we may well have a number of people on the call with us today on this session who would be happy to have somebody on the ground that can support and assist them, and we will be happy to facilitate that. So to my members who are currently on the call with us today, please, if you want to speak to Judy and reach out, please let me know, and I'd be very happy to put you in contact with her. And it's always good to have a ground handler that you can trust and that you've had an opportunity to meet. And Kimbom, you've heard it. We, the tour operators, they want you to arrange for a road trip to South Africa where we can do some training sessions on the destination. Hopefully, David, you'll be able to support us with a few plane tickets to get them out here. I know at the moment every flight is all but full, but you know, it might be a nice opportunity for us to do something like we used to do in the past, which would help to support and grow a better knowledge and understanding of the destination. So Judy, thank you so much for that.
Oh, Otto, just one thing before we continue is that I forgot to mention another very, very attractive thing to do in Singapore is our culinary.
Yes.
You heard of the Beat Gourmand, the street food Michelin thing. So Singapore, we have a lot of Michelin star, but street food Michelin star. And we do have like a street food Michelin star tour that brings people, because for a visitor to come to Singapore is quite daunting, to find out where these stores are and to find out, who they are and where they are. So what we do is that we actually put a few together, and then we can do a Michelin street food tour for them.
Wow.
So these are different type of culinary in Singapore. Okay,
Sounds
that's it.
absolutely
Sorry.
amazing. And by the way, you were reading my mind, because the next thing I was hoping we could have a little chat about was cuisine and food. And I was fascinated to hear that you guys have, 55 Michelin star restaurants. That's phenomenal. And also knowing geographically the size of Singapore, it is a huge feather in your cap. But I love this idea of having this opportunity to combine that with street food. And so, Zainal, I have to ask you, when you get to travel home, like, what is one of the first things that you go, oh, it's so good to be home. This is what I need to get into my belly.
Laksa.
A man after my stomach. A man after my stomach. But actually, I will relate this back to David's earlier remarks about Singapore Airlines and your exchange, Otto, with David about Singapore Airlines. One of the great things about, and I know I'm a Singaporean, I know I represent my country in South Africa, and so therefore I am just a tad biased. But one of the great things about Singapore Airlines, for a Singaporean in particular, and I think I dare say it's also for a visitor, anyone who is about to visit Singapore for the first time, they get to experience Singapore from the moment they embark onto a Singapore airline plane. In planes, for instance, leaving from Johannesburg to Singapore, well, actually, it's not on all classes, I admit, it's on business class in particular. One of the things that Singapore Airlines serve on business class is a plate of satay. Satay is, well, you know what satay is. I mean, you have satay here because you have a Cape Malay cuisine as well in Cape Town. Okay, they don't have the same satay as we do, but they have kind of the same sort. It's a kebab, actually, but it's, of course, for us, in Singapore, we've always been quite proud of the fact that we've got satay, and our satay is the best in the world. And that is one of the best satays in the world that I've tasted. And it's not just because David is here that I'm saying this. It's actually served in Singapore Airlines. So you get to experience that right from the start. So when I go back to Singapore, I look forward to actually going to Singapore Airlines and getting that plate of satay for my satay fix. But look, I can wax lyrical. I can fill up this entire session just talking about Singapore food. Unfortunately, in South Africa, there is no genuine Singapore restaurant. It's something that I'm working on. And I'm working on as well with this Food Manufacturers Association in Singapore to try to get more Singapore food stuff in the supermarkets in South Africa. So when you go next time to Woolies, or when you go next time to Pick and Pay, you would be able to find sachets where you can create or prepare your own Singapore food. That's what I'm trying to work on as the High Commissioner here, working with industry. I'm not sure whether it's going to be working out, but I'd like to expose South Africans more and more to Singapore cuisine. I'm also working with some restaurants in Pretoria in the hope that maybe we can even have a Singapore food festival. We start small and perhaps increase the scale it up if there is more interest. And so this is something that I'm going to be working on. So watch this space. But the important thing for Singapore as well is that it's not just Singapore cuisine that is superlative in Singapore. You've got great Japanese food if you're into Japanese food. You've got great Indian food if you're into Indian food. You've got great Korean food. There are streets that are filled with nothing but Korean and Japanese restaurants. You've got great Thai food. And I know that South Africans are obsessed with Thai food. And so therefore, we've got great sampling of that as well. So it's not just about any one particular cuisine. Of course, we're biased about our own cuisine, but any nationality would be able to find pretty good sampling of food. Now, then in your mind, I know, because looking at you, probably asking, what about South African cuisine? Do you have good braai in South Africa? I can't say that they've got the same sort of approach towards braai as you do in South Africa, but I am quite sure that we've got pretty good meat. One of the things that I'm working on as well is that we still cannot import meat from South Africa into Singapore, but we do have meat from other sources as well. And I think increasingly South African wine is being appreciated more and more by Singaporeans. So that is coming up. But to cut the long story short, Otto, anything that you wish for, you can find in Singapore. And I dare say that you have a pretty good representation of world cuisine in Singapore. Cheers.
I can't wait for lunchtime. I can't speak about the rest of you, but there's been a couple of comments and questions that have popped up, which I thought would be quite nice to share. So Judy, to your point, Trinell says, I remember those workshops years ago. We would love to see it again. Thank you, Judy. And then Stacy says, please keep us posted. We would also love to see it again. And then you've obviously got a lot of people thinking about food now. Stacy also saying, oh yes, the chef in me is getting excited. So if we do a food festival of sorts, I think that's going to get a good response. KB, when you go home, what's the first thing on your mind in terms of I must do this or I must eat that? Are you going night clubbing with Judy's daughter until 4 in the morning?
I'll just go to one of the many hawker centers. Usually most of us have an affection for the one probably closest to where we live, because that's where we go pick up takeaways quite easily. And over time, you develop a sense of place with that hawker center. So for mine, it would have to be the Tiong Bahru one, because that's the one area that I grew up in. And then, of course, now I don't live there anymore. But that hawker center itself does have quite a strong affinity for that. So it doesn't matter what food, because all of them in general, they serve pretty much the same array of hawker food. So you've got your chicken rice, you've got prata, you've got all the different nasi lemak, different cuisines of the different communities that live in Singapore. So those that's pretty common. So it depends on which is the hawker center. So that's where I would go to when I land back in Singapore. But I'm actually based in New Delhi. So the cuisine here is incredible. That's a lot of culinary option. So I'm exposed to a different variety of Indian food that I've not seen in Singapore myself. And they have a lot of award-winning bars and restaurants here as well. So it's just the capital city. All the embassies are here. The international scene is great, and the local scene is also very vibrant and exciting. So
have you had bunny chow yet? KB, have you had bunny chow yet?
No, actually, I've only been here for about 3 weeks.
No. Bunny chow is a completely South African concept.
Oh wow.
You get it only in Durban. When you come visit, I'll introduce you to bunny chow. Right, Otto?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you,
in fact, we made some bunny chows for some friends of ours that were visiting from overseas, and we made some bunny chows for them when they came to visit us a few weeks ago. David, have you had a bunny chow in your visits to Durban?
Yes, I ensure I always have one on every visit.
You must have an interesting relationship with Singapore. Obviously, working for the airline and traveling there regularly makes you sort of like a quasi-local, quasi-tourist. What are your kinds of experiences that you would recommend? For people who are visiting Singapore for the first time. And I mean, we could break it up into a family experience or a business trip or a stayover. I mean, just your own experiences. Can you share a little bit about what some of the things would be that you would recommend?
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, Singapore is like a second home to me, and I've been with Singapore Airlines 18 plus years. And I had the great opportunity of actually living in Singapore when I was working in the head office as well. And in fact, my brother lives in Singapore, married to a Singaporean, has children there. So I have a very close affinity to Singapore. But yeah, for me, the food. So for me, when I'm off the plane, it is chicken in no particular order, but all three, ideally at once. Laksa, chicken rice, and beef kway teow. I like going to, I'm quite an outdoors person, so I love going to East Coast Park, which is the main park from Changi, the quick 20 minutes drive into the main city. That park, there's running tracks, cycling tracks. You can sit down on well, almost like the beach. There's hawker centers. There's absolutely everything you can do there. So on weekends when I was living there, that was my outdoor spot to go. As long as it wasn't raining or you couldn't see the clouds rolling in, that would be where I'd go hang out on my Saturday and Sunday afternoons. But then no.
Point of order. Point of order. I take objection to the fact that David said almost like a beach. It is a veritable beach. It may not be Durban Beach, but it is a beach.
Okay.
I just needed to make that point.
There we go. And the beach there then. Yeah, so like when I was living there, my sister would come and visit with the family. So family-wise, we would take them to Sentosa, where you had Universal Studios and things like that, which are all very children friendly. When I had couples coming without children at that stage, then the Michelin star restaurants, the hawker centers, and the nightlife, your Boat Quay, Clark Quay, Robinson Quay, and so on. There's just so many options across the way, and always new things up and coming, new bars, new restaurants. So it's got literally something for everyone. And yeah, I love it. I love going back to Singapore.
Oh, wonderful, David. And I think it's those sorts of insights that gets people excited about destinations and helps to create ideas and thoughts. Bev's just said, it must be a pleasure to work for a country, a tourist board, and an airline that everyone only gives excellent feedback on. And Singapore is visa-free for South Africans. Such a pleasure. Excellent overview on all aspects. Thank you. So thank you, Bev, for sharing your thoughts with us.
No, I think from my perspective, I'm very proud and honored.
Yeah, go on, David. Go on, David.
No, I
just want to say to Bev and to you, Otto, that do not open the can of worms by asking Singaporeans to criticize ourselves, because you will not hear the end of it. We are extremely self-critical, not very different from South Africans, I must say.
David, you wanted to add?
Oh no, just very lucky to be working with Singapore Airlines and having the opportunities it's given me over my 18 years, and working closely with the partners in Singapore like STB, Changi Group, and so on, and with Zainal. I love everything I do, and every day I love it.
Fantastic, guys. So I don't know. There was rumor of a possible video being lined up, and if some of us on the team can advise me just via message whether we will or won't. Otherwise, I guess at this point in time, I would love to give everyone the opportunity to have any sort of closing remarks. And if I may, Zainal, I'm going to ask you to be the last one. So Judy, let's begin with you. Any sort of closing last words you'd like to share?
Well, I do hope to see a, great revival of visitors coming from South Africa and Southern Africa, really. Singapore is so different. It's been so many years, almost 20 years. So there's a lot of new offerings, and we change our skyline almost every 2 years. So 20 years is a lot of changes. So for those who have been to Singapore previously, should now think of planning a holiday here. And because, sorry, David, I know you fly direct, but there's also a lot of airline opportunity coming from Bangkok to Singapore. So they can do a dual destination kind of thing coming to Singapore. So stop in Thailand, say Thailand offerings is definitely different from Singapore. So, at least they can have this experience. So I really hope to see a revival.
No, lovely, Judy.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Work on it, guys.
And I think one of the interesting things, as you spoke about in terms of times having changed, the VFR business between South Africa and countries like Australia and New Zealand, a very, very large part of our population have immigrated to. Singapore has become a very obvious channel of access to that market, and has, I think, enjoyed, and I'm sure David can support that in terms of the sales, has enjoyed a lot of support out of the South African market, and with it, obviously, the opportunities that come with that. David, any sort of last thoughts from your side?
I just think maybe to back up what Judy was saying, yeah, we see a lot of sales here where they combine Thailand or Indonesia. South Africans, they'll maybe do a week's holiday there, then combine it with Singapore for 4 or 5 days on the way back. So it's quite a popular itinerary we do sell. And then from your perspective, yes, we do see a lot of VFR. And from Singapore, we connect to 7 cities in Australia and over 100 flights a week from Singapore into Australia. So wow. You're correct. I feed into that, or Singapore Airlines from Johannesburg. So you have multiple connections down to Australia too. Otherwise, from me, I look forward to welcoming you on board soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. KB, last thoughts from you?
Well, thanks, Otto. I'm happy to hear that from Judy and David. So from a tourism perspective, of course, I would be happy if all the trips are bound for Singapore only. But I do hear that there are other popular itineraries. So even from a stopover perspective, I do hope that at least the length of stay will be sufficient enough to do justice to the range of offerings, be it for the first-time visitor or for the repeat visitors, given the number of new things that I've shared in this webinar.
Lovely. Thank you so much, KB. Right, Zainal, the last word is to you before we wrap things up.
Thanks, Otto. By the way, this has been a great session, one of the better or best sessions. In fact, I've been privileged to participate because I think it's interactive and we're speaking. I think most of us, in fact, all of us, are speaking directly from the heart. We get some interactions coming from the participants as well. I'm very glad for your interest in Destination Singapore. But like I began earlier, I mean, it's a Setswana saying which keeps entering into my mind, saying that to travel is to see. And I think it's much deeper than what it suggests. Obviously, to travel is to see, but it's actually to see, to understand, to appreciate, to grasp, to be able to get to know one another. I think the traveling bit is important. Now, I've got many anecdotes of traveling on Singapore Airlines back to Singapore, where I would be sitting next to South Africans of different ethnicities, of different ethnic groups, coming to visit Singapore for the first time without having any prior knowledge about Singapore, just by reputation alone. They know about Singapore as being urbanized. It's very different from what you have in South Africa. We do not have game reserve. We don't have the big five. We have other kinds of big, but not the big five. But at the same time, I think what Singapore offers, and Otto, you have experienced it yourself in Singapore, which is something quite different. And I don't know whether I'm oversimplifying things by saying this, but it's just coming to Singapore, you just get a sense of possibilities of things that can be done, and despite the fact that we have nothing to begin with. It sounds a bit propagandish, I do admit, but at the end of the day, when you go to Singapore, you see the gleaming skyscrapers. By the way, not everybody is enamored by our skyscrapers because they think it's too hot, it's too concrete, it's too artificial, etc. But the kind of thing that Singapore has created in Singapore, and this is something which my Prime Minister had said before, everything about Singapore is by design. Everything about Singapore is not an accident. Everything in Singapore, someone has thought about it. People like KB, as well as his colleagues in Singapore Tourism Board, when they think about activities, about interesting sites, there is a thought process to it. That there is a lot of data that we have gathered to try to create that sort of availability or offerings in Singapore. But I think the one thing that I'm very proud of, despite the fact that it's almost rational, comprehensive in the way we do things in Singapore, including coming up with our offerings. But there is a lot of heart as well involved, because it's not just about what tourists are attracted by. We ask ourselves, what is it about ourselves that we can offer to visitors? And this is something which I think there's a combination of thought of the head and the heart that produce what we have in Singapore. It's not a very big country, as you know. It's Shuane, where I live, is about 17,000 square kilometers. Singapore is about 720 square kilometers. Like I said, it's a very small country with huge population. And if you think about Singapore as a population of 5.5 million, but Singaporeans themselves just make just a fraction of that as well. So therefore, it's a country that's very cosmopolitan, very urbanized, very different from South Africa, and that's what we have to offer South Africa. So come to Singapore, travel and see, as the Botswanas say. Thank you very much, Otto. Thank you so much, Rodrigo, as well, for this opportunity. And thank you so much for my Singaporean compatriots, be they in New Delhi or in Johannesburg and back in Singapore. Love to you all.
Rodrigo, closing words from your side?
Yeah, thank you, Otto. Definitely, for those who don't know, I'm actually broadcasting from Singapore, so I'm actually enjoying what you're missing. I came here for the first time in my life 30 over years ago, got in love with it. And well, I think that my Panamanian roots are sunk into the Singaporean soil. Definitely, I share with everyone their opinions about the food, about the places to go. Definitely that incredible landmark that is Gardens by the Bay, and so many other things that it has. I will not spoil it. South Africans, you have to come and visit. I need to thank at this point to all the attendees and to our panelists, KB and Singapore Tourism Board, David, Singapore Airlines, Judy through Natas, and definitely my good old friend Zainal, without the HE. But definitely we are very happy to be able to connect the world this year after a long pandemic, opening the doors for everybody to start traveling and to start connecting and getting to know again what we have been missing for the past 2 years. Ambassador Rec, thanks our viewers, and hopefully see you on our next destination next month. For you, good afternoon, good morning, good night.
Bye-bye, everybody.